People often ask how I discover locations and stories for this channel. The answer isn't so straightforward, it's a mix really. I once had a job that required driving every square inch of the metro area and beyond. I picked up a lot of ideas doing that. Aimlessly clicking around Google Maps has netted a fair few videos too, along with plenty of great suggestions from you guys. But otherwise, I'm a fiend for internet rabbit holes. Ever since gaining a high-speed internet connection in my teens, I would spend countless late nights delving deep into subjects I came across. In those days, it might have resulted in urbex photography. You can check out my website if you'd like to see some of that. Big Bell is one location that appeared during one of these many late night sessions. It included a massive Art Deco pub in the middle of the desert that was missing its roof. I had to visit. This was out of reach during my formative years however, since it's situated 30 kilometers southwest of Kew. Kew itself is about 6.5 hours drive from Perth. I had no chance getting there without a license or a willing chaperone, so, as you can probably imagine, I was very excited to finally visit. Gold was initially discovered around Big Bell in 1904. The lease was owned by Harry Patton, which was near the original 70-mile peg of the rabbit-proof fence. Out of the 330 tons of material he mined, he eventually discovered over 307 ounces of gold. The lease morphed into an open-cut mine in the following decades, opening and closing various times with a rotation of different owners. It was a common theme that technological restrictions would eventually shutter the mine. There would still be viable ore, but it was too deep to be profitable at those times. The story goes that in 1913, an owner lacked so much confidence that they traded the lease for just a horse and cart. By the 1930s, it was quite a large operation. There was yet to be a town, but a group of men lived in a tent city close to the mine. The most luxurious of dwellings were nothing more than timber frames and galvanized iron cladding. Apparently everyone in the camp were well behaved, as recalled by old-timers in the 1950s. Only one man came to mind who didn't work well with others, who were slowly pushed out of the area. It must have been pretty bad if they were still talking about him 2 or 3 decades later. By March 1936, it was announced that a railway spur would be constructed from Kew to the Big Bell lease. At this time, between 300 and 400 men were employed at the mine. A town site was imminent, so the Kew Road Board got busy. It started with a request of land for sanitary reasons, clearing works for roads, and even the installation of signage warning against squatting on Crown land. Various names for the town were floated. These included Windaro, Chesson, and Ubarns. Obviously, it was eventually named after the mine. That was the reason for its existence after all. The process moved quickly. By April, reserves and commercial lots had been gazetted, and the railway route was set in stone. In late April, there was a land sale at the Kew Courthouse. 36 out of the 48 available residential lots were sold. A further 102 were then surveyed, with another land sale in late June. 80 lots were sold this time around, including commercial lots, with the total revenue being over £9,000. Shortly after, the surveying of the business district was complete, and a section of the rabbit-proof fence was transferred west. Originally, it ran right through the middle of the future town site. The railway spur was built for £50,000 under an agreement between the government and the mining company. It ran for about 30 kilometres and was built quickly. Work commenced October 1936, with the first train running by December. However, it wasn't operating under normal conditions until the following August. The town site sprung up quickly and appeared quite modern and luxurious for its time. There were all the amenities you'd expect of a larger town, except it was in the middle of the desert. That's gold mining money for you. One of the centerpieces was the Palais Theatre and Gardens. This was designed by W.G. Bennett, who also designed the Regal Theatre in Subiaco. It included the ability to show movies in the gardens as well, useful for evenings during warmer seasons, which the region had plenty of. The Big Bell Hospital Ball was the first event at the theatre in the October of 1937. It was such a big deal that pamphlets were dropped from an aircraft announcing the event. Its grandeur would be short-lived, however. Several months after opening, the theatre burned down without the cause ever being discovered. The replacement wasn't as grand as the original either, thanks to a shortage of capital and materials. The state school also opened in 1937 with an enrolment of just 18. This number would go up and down over the years, however, sometimes even leading to overcrowding. During the war, when the mine closed, it had as little as 5 students, but by 1954 it was up to 100 pupils across 3 classrooms. A secondary institution, the St. Cecilia's Convent School, would also open in the November of 1948. That would operate until 1954 when it was transferred to Geraldton, building and all. The structure remained at the Stella Marie College until 1989 when it was finally demolished. Most structures were built out of wood, metal and fibro. These were materials that were easily transportable and reusable later, as was common across regional WA during this time. My sources do mention a single house that was built out of cement brick, however, and I would hazard a guess this is it. I'm unsure why they built this with such permanency compared to the rest of the houses, but a lot of it was ultimately removed. What remains consists of 2 rooms that share a chimney. These days, it appears to be a camping spot and includes a makeshift roof. There were a range of shops on Townshend Street, named after local pastoralists from the early century. These included tea rooms, drapers, a chemist, news agency, hairdressers, and a library. There were even 2 illegal betting shops, so the miners could have a punt. Additional luxuries at the time included an iceworks, and an Olympic-sized swimming pool with illuminated tennis courts, both at the mine but open to the public. The Big Bell Hotel was built during the September of 1936. Common for the decade, it has an Art Deco design. The curved corner, for instance, is just about iconic. It was designed by George Herbert Parry and Marshall Waller Gervase Clifton. They both had plenty of hotels on their resumes. These included the Inglewood Hotel, the Captain Stirling, and the Orient in Fremantle. Big Bell resembles the Inglewood the most, thanks to the curved corner. A lot of people incorrectly state Big Bell was modelled after the Como Hotel, but Big Bell is actually 2 years older. The Como was also designed by a completely different architecture firm. The Big Bell Hotel was built for £36,000. That was considered high for the time, but the hotel apparently paid for itself within 6 years. It included 36 bedrooms with both hot and cold running water, which was uncommon even for Perth hotels. Allegedly, the bar was 66 feet long, the same as a cricket pitch. A factoid that regularly gets spouted around the internet is that this was the longest in Australia. I'm not sure exactly where this comes from, or if it's even true. The source the Wikipedia page of Big Bell uses is a 2004 trip diary written by the Mitsubishi 4-wheel drive Owners Club of Western Australia. While no doubt well-meaning, it's not exactly solid information. I would say at best, this is an urban legend from back in a time when fact-checking was much more difficult. It's a fun idea though. What we do know for sure is that the premise was quite comfortable. Written accounts include plenty of rugs, carpets and leatherette chairs. I'd happily drink a pint there. Sounds cozy. It's a shame I couldn't find more photos of the interior when it was operational. The hotel usually had between 6 and 8 residents on a more permanent basis too. A notable guest was a Scotland Yard detective who was in pursuit of a fugitive. A feature of the hotel that stood out for me were lockable single garages. Was this usual practice back then? Should make a comeback. The pub was a central meeting place in town. It appeared everyone in the town ate and drank there, along with plenty of social events like balls. It was literally the centre of attention in town, positioned prominently in the middle of the commercial zone and across the road from the train station. Apparently, it became a bit wilder in its later years. For instance, the beer garden furniture was tied down because of the frequency of drunken brawls. In early 1954, the pub attempted to increase the price of a schooner by 1 penny. The townspeople protested in force and flocked to queue to drink instead. This resulted in the pub reneging on the price hike, but of course led to record sales when everyone suddenly returned at once. The mine was doing well, but did close between 1943 and 1945 for what is probably an obvious reason. Gold mining took a back seat during this time, so manpower and resources could be focused on the war effort. The police station closed, with the post office reducing in size and eventually becoming unofficial. Many homes were left vacant during this time too, but luckily funds were secured from the government for ongoing maintenance. Apparently it was so quiet, kangaroos, rabbits and stock roamed the street like they probably do now. When it reopened, production started again quite quickly and the town returned to its former state. The status quo would then continue for another 10 years. By 1954, the population had reached 850 and the townsite's developments had matured. Each residence, while small, included ornamental trees that weren't common for the area. There was a steady supply of water from 3 government wells, so most homes had lawns too. Films were shown 3 times a week at the theatre. There were mail services several times a week by air and rail. Friday was the market day where perishables were delivered. Typical Saturday sports included pigeon racing and cycling, while on Sunday, depending on the season, there was golf, hockey, swimming, rifle shooting, and of course, footy and cricket. It sounded like an idyllic town from those late descriptions, and I'm sure it was. But it would all come to an end when the mine closed the following year. As many times before, the operation at Big Bell fell below the break-even point. When all was said and done, between 1904 and 1955, the mine would produce nearly 21 metric tons of gold. Most of the residents worked at the mine, and those who didn't serviced the mine and its workers in some way or another. As such, the town depopulated quickly. Despite the news, this didn't stop the State Housing Commission from building 12 houses. As you can probably imagine, some of these were never lived in. The railway would have closed at this point also, with the portion going through Kew eventually also closing in 1978. Since the lines were ripped up long ago, there's not much to find along the spur. Heading into the Kew townsite, besides from faint earthworks, I did find these two bridges near the aptly named Railway Street. The original Kew train station does still exist. These days, it's been repurposed into a sporting pavilion for the town oval. This has been tastefully done, and the former platform is no doubt suitable for resting on while watching sport. Believe it or not, the Big Bell Hotel outlasted the town by several years. In 1955, as the mine was being shut down, a local businessman named Eddie Hannon bought the hotel for £2,500. This sale included all the hotel's contents, so appears to be quite a good deal, even with the mine closure. He continued to run the hotel normally for several years, as travellers still passed through the region. It closed in the late 50s or early 60s, however, but a lot of it ended up somewhere quite unexpected. Between 1961 and 1963, Hannon began dismantling the hotel and transporting the materials to Horrocks, about an hour north of Geraldton. This included the fittings, frames, roof and floor timber, furniture, roof tiles, toilets, basins, you get the idea. This was all used to build the general store and associated chalets in Horrocks. My source for this information, which is from the 80s, reached out to Hannon, who was by then living in Geraldton. They were after more information about the final years of the hotel, but unfortunately, he never responded. Horrocks is well worth a visit if you're ever in the area. I've only ever passed through, but I'd love to stay there one day. The town looks like it should belong on a postcard. As a final bonus for the story of the hotel, the general store that it built includes a bottle shop. In an essence, the legacy of the Big Bell Hotel continues. Just now you can enjoy a beverage on the beach instead of the desert. The mine eventually reactivated in the 1980s as methods of extracting the gold improved. There were talks of reopening the town too, but I assume this was deemed unnecessary because of its proximity to Kew. The mine went through several owners over the next few decades, but closed again in 2003. The plant was then transported to the Westonia mine in 2007 at a cost of $5.2 million. Big Bell wouldn't stay closed for long, however. History always repeats, and it opened yet again in 2020 after 3 years of work to get the site up to scratch. This is convenient if you want to visit the hotel in Ghost Town, because the roads from Kew to there are incredibly well maintained. Even the unsealed road leading to the hotel and mine have been graded to such an extent, it's more akin to bitumen. It's only a 20-minute drive, and was quite comfortable in a two-wheel drive. Just be wary that there is quite a lot of trucks driving to and from the mine site. From what I can tell by looking at old photos, the ruins of the Big Bell Hotel have looked pretty much the same since the 70s and 80s, and likely since it was dismantled decades prior. The core that remains holds strong against the dry climate. So dry in fact, the decades-old graffiti looks like it could have been from yesterday. I wouldn't classify it as a safe structure, however. It appears there's been attempts to keep people out in the past, but any fence that's installed magically develops holes soon after. Explore at your own risk. Having said that, while gutted, it's easy to imagine what it would have looked like in its prime. It's very well designed and grand looking, even in its naked state. The rest of the town mostly consists of concrete slabs and dirt roads, but there are a few more notable ruins. I've already mentioned the house constructed of cement bricks, but close to the hotel you'll find a former Catholic church. I don't think it's held a sermon in quite a few decades, and the cross is made from discarded rubbish, but it's the most intact structure besides from the pub. Otherwise, there is the usual stuff you'd expect to see, like a baker's oven and the telltale concrete footings of the powerhouse. The water tower is a bit unexpected too, which is found next to the site of the state school. The most notable remain of that is the concrete water fountain, which I totally forgot to film. You can see it in the background of this photo I took of the information sign, however. Besides from Horrocks, elements of the town do live on elsewhere. In 1958, the former nurses' quarters were moved to Kew. These days, the shacks are accommodation in the Kew Tourist Park. While they don't have bathrooms, there's a toilet block within the park instead, they are priced pretty well per night. They include simple kitchens and modern creature comforts like aircon. Considering I paid $200 a night for what was essentially a metal box anyway, I should have seriously considered them for the 2 nights we spent in Kew. Speaking of where we stayed, we visited Kew on a filming trip that also took us through Geraldton and up to Kalbarri. I documented this trip in a members video along with a similar separate trip to the Kalgoorlie region. I have quite a few behind the scenes videos that can be viewed through the membership. These include a 2-part series on how I made the Clays Brook video, and even a travel guide I filmed while on holiday in Melbourne. There, I visited some places I think this audience would find quite interesting. The most recent video is about a car camping build I did for my Subaru Forester. I spend quite a lot of money on accommodation for these videos, and like the $200 a night metal box, can leave a lot to be desired. The idea is to instead camp, but utilise the creature comforts an SUV can provide. Throughout the video I build the setup, test it, and even head out on a few mini adventures. They weren't really the sort of locations or stories that would be suitable for a full video, but are perfect to include in a camping vlog. I'm planning on making more of these in the future. The support program is just $3 a month and can be cancelled at any time. That $3 includes the extra content, shows your username at the end of the videos, and highlights any comments you might make. All money earned goes back into the production of future videos. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, which I've already filmed, along with the one after that. Man, I really need to stick to one video at a time.